Hi, YouTube world. I thought I would just share a little short, brief video with you, and it's a topic that I find fairly interesting, and I'm sure some of you find it interesting too. But before I get into my topic, I'd just like to give a brief introduction. Um, in this video, I'm going to be coming from a biblical standpoint, and some of you I may be some terms that I may use may be unfamiliar to some of you, and maybe some of the things that I say might be unfamiliar to some of you, so you won't be lost and want to know what in the world she's talking about. I just want to just clear up some things right quick. Now, when I make reference to God, as most of you know him as, I'm going to say Yah, because that's the actual name of the Most High. That's the actual name of the Creator. And you will see where he's actually named in the book of Psalms, chapter 68, verse 4. And then also, too, when I talk about the people of the book, the people of the Bible, the children of Israel, I am of those who hold to the belief that the children of Israel, the so-called African Americans, and a lot of that those in the African diaspora all over the Americas, and even some tribes in Africa, and even some in Asia, are the children of Israel. So I'm going to be coming from that standpoint. So I'm just going to, lay that out there now so you won't be lost when I get into my video. So you may be seeing my eyes may stray away from the camera, but that's because I'm looking at my notes to make sure that I include what I want to, all the things and points that I want to make in this video. So back to the topic. As you can see, the video is titled, "You Are What Your Mother Is Too." So you want to know, well, where am I going with this? Well, as you all know, this past weekend, the celebrity Meghan Markle was married to Prince Harry. And of course, it was a big hoopla about it. But even leading up to the time of her marriage, there was a great debate among some that was going happening about her. Was she black? Was she biracial? Or is she just straight white? So you had people on Facebook and social media, YouTube, going back and forth about whether or not Meghan Markle was black, mixed, biracial, white, or whatever. And so you have some say that, well, she's black because of the one drop rule, and because the black traits, the black genes are dominant. So she's a black woman. And of course, in those in parents with mixed children, a lot of them do, and I think they should prepare their child for this, because society, for the most part, will see them as black. So it's good that parents with mixed children prepare them for this. And then you have some that says that she's biracial or she's mixed because she has one black parent and one white parent. Now, honestly, I don't like using the word biracial, because really, if you really, do your research, there's really no such thing as race. Race was actually created by races, but that's another discussion for another day. But for this video's sake, I'll use biracial, or I'll use mixed. And so some say she's mixed because she has one black parent and one white parent. And then you have another group that says, well, she's white because you are what your father is. Now, that's a doctrine among some. And this is what I was taught when I was growing up, that you are what your father is. I heard this when I was in church. And since I was taught this in church, my parents taught me this too. You are what your father is. So are you? Are you just you are what your father is, and it doesn't matter what your mother is? Is this supported by the Bible? Is this supported by science? And those who hold to this, a lot of times, they use the Bible to support that you are what your father is. And one chapter that they love to use is Numbers chapter 1. Now, I'm not going to read Numbers 1, But I'm just going to paraphrase it and just just give you the gist of what Numbers 1 is. You can go back and read Numbers chapter 1 yourself. I'm going to include the list of all the scriptures that I make reference to in this video in the last screen of this last slide of this video. But number one, numbers, numbers like the different men of each tribe of Israel, and they were numbered and classified according to the tribe of their fathers. And you see this when you go and read the chapter, you will see that this is repeated over and over, according to the house of their fathers, according to the tribe of their fathers, and everything. So is this proven that you are what your father is? It doesn't matter what your mother is. You take on your father's, you take on his identity. Okay, so I'm going to say this. Now, for the children to take on their father's identity, back in those times, the wife, the woman, when she got married, she typically moved in with the man and went to where his family was. And so to avoid confusion, it would only make sense for the wife and then the children that comes from this union to fall under the classification, the tribe, the identity of their father. That was only natural, and that was a system. It would be a consistent way of classifying by classifying the child as the identity, the tribe of the father. That was a consistent way of classifying descendants, and that was a set way. So that avoided confusion. So that makes sense. But is this proof that the child is what the father is? Now, in today's society, you can compare that. We don't go by tribes now. But in today's society, you can compare that is when the wife, typically, not all the time, the wife, when a woman, when she marries a man, she takes his last name. And the children take the last name of their father. But, does that mean that the child is exclusively of the father? The child is given the father's name, yes. So if you're a woman and you are a Davis and you marry a Smith, you take on the name Smith and your child take on the name Smith, does that mean that your child won't have any Davis genetics, just have only Smith genetics? No. That child is just as much genetically a part of the mother as they are of the father. It's just they take on the father's name. It's just the name that they take on. But genetically, they're just as much as one as the other. And I'm going to go further to prove my point. I'm not done. Okay, and there's another scripture that I want to make reference to. This is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 2 through 8. Now, in this one, it talks about the mamzer, or if you read in other translations, it's called the bastard. The bastard cannot enter into the congregation of Yah, the Most High. Now, the congregation of Yah, the Most High, that's like a sanctuary, a holy place of Israel. So that was like a holy place, a sanctuary where they went to, to worship. Now, of course, many of you are familiar with that word bastard. And most of us was taught that bastard was a child that was born from an unwed mother. But actually, if you really research the meaning, now it's also mamzer. It's also called mamzer. Mamzer is spelled M-A-M-Z-E-R. Mamzer and bastard, it's the same thing. But actually, a mamzer or a bastard is a child from a forbidden union. But it gives examples of a forbidden union if you research it. A child from adultery, a child from incest. But it's not saying it's a child from an unwed mother. Or a mamzer or a bastard can also be a child by an Israelite, one Israelite parent and one non-Israelite or heathen parent. So that's what a mamzer is. So, you may have some, people that was born out of wedlock, and they heard this term bastard, and means like a child from an unwed mother, and some of them may have a complex by that. But no, that's not what some sources may say that. But actually, if you really do thorough research, that's really not what it means. And in this same passage, it also goes on to say that children of an Ammonite or a Moabite, children of people of these nations, cannot enter into the congregation, the sanctuary, into the 10th generation. And it also goes on to say that the children of an Egyptian or an Edomite cannot enter into the 3rd generation. Now, what this is talking about, if you are an Israelite and you married a person of any of these nations, and if y'all have a child, that child would not be able to enter into the sanctuary. And then even down to the 10th generation, because even if that child, the offspring, marries an Israelite, still the child from that union would not be until it's bred out. And as you can see, when you go back and read this passage, you will see that no gender of either parent is specified. So if those who hold to the belief that you are what your father is, why doesn't the scripture say something like this? Now if y'all are saying that, if you're saying that the scriptures is saying that you are what your father is, why didn't it say something on this order? Why didn't it read like this? A child of a Moabite or Ammonite father and Israelite mother, the father is non-Israelite, the mother is an Israelite, cannot enter into the congregation or the sanctuary. But the child who has an Israelite father and a non-Israelite mother can enter. If a child is what the father is, why didn't it specify a gender? You see, the scripture doesn't even specify genders. It doesn't say that. And I also want to say, as far as like the not being allowed into the sanctuary, that's not saying that they couldn't, children from these unions couldn't be saved. When you read the scriptures and certain people were not allowed in the sanctuary, that doesn't mean that they couldn't receive salvation. No, that doesn't mean that they were wicked. That was just meaning that they were not of pure enough Israelite blood to qualify as a full Israelite. I mean, you had even the unclean and those with the afflicted, and maybe like women on their periods, and a man who has crushed genitals. They were not allowed in the congregation either. But that didn't mean that they were wicked. No. It was just a certain standard that was set, that only certain people were allowed in this this set apart place, this sanctuary. And I also would like to reference another scripture to show that it does matter what the mother is. Ezra, the book of Ezra, chapter 10, verses 3. And this was when the Israelites, right after the Babylonian captivity, and they came back to their land, and they was trying to get right and purify themselves. But it was discovered that some Israelite men took strange wives, heathen wives, and they took wives of nations that we were told not to marry. They used particular nations that we were told not to marry, and these men married these strange women and had children from them. Now, if you read this verse, you will see that these men put these wives away, and they didn't stop there. And they put away the children from these unions. Now, if the child is what their father is, now the men were Israelites, these women were not. If the child is what the father is, that means these children will be Israelites too. Why did the fathers put the children away too? Not just the wives, the children away too. Why would they put their own progeny away? Why didn't they just send away the strange wives, keep the children, And then they go and marry, Israelite wives, and they raise the children together. Even if the children was taught the wicked ways of the mother, okay, they can raise the child is young, they can correct the child and bring the child back on the right path. They sent the children away with the mother because the children was also a part of the mother. And since they were from nations that we were told not to marry, these men cut off all connection to these wicked nations. So yes, that's showing you right there. Yes, the child is also a part of the mother. Now I know it's natural to try to classify something as one or the other, but it's not always that easy, when it comes to mixing. And it can be confusing. It can be also unsettling when you can't just classify something or someone as one thing or the other. And then since I'm saying this, you wonder why mixing, whether it's plants, animals, or people, why it's not recommended in the scriptures. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all mixed marriages are wrong. But there were some nations that we were strictly forbidden to marry. And also with mixed heritage, it comes with some challenges. You hear it from a lot of people that are mixed, and sometimes they do experience an identity crisis. It comes with its challenges. But to get back, not to stray off from my topic, I just want to go back into the genetic aspect of it. For science, even science proves that a child is genetically 50% of each parent. Now, this is basic biology 101. The human has 46 chromosomes. And we inherit 23 from each parent. So we get 50% from each one parent, 50% from the other parent. The sperm comes from the father, the egg from the mother. And then, of course, sperm, if you trace back the meaning, sperm means seed. And this is where people also push the argument that the child is of the father because the man carries the seed. Yeah, the man carries the seed is alive, but the sperm or the seed still needs to join with the egg to reproduce. The sperm cannot reproduce on its own. It cannot reproduce independently from the egg. It takes two. It takes two. And I know that there are some articles that says that a child is more genetically like the father because the father's genes are more active. But the mother's genes are still present. And then you also find, conflicting research that says, no, the child has more of the mother's genes. So but I'm saying, but even if the child is more genetically like the father, they still have half of their genes is still from the mother. So, and then in speaking of genetics or your DNA, your DNA is you. Your genetics, your DNA is you. Physically speaking, it's you. Your DNA is what you're made of. So if half of your genetics, your DNA comes from the father and half comes from the mother, how can you deny a half of yourself? How can you deny half of yourself? How can you say you're of one half and not of the other half? When your genetics, your DNA is you. It's your code. It's made up of codes. It's you. So really, if you think about what your father is, you read the scriptures and you get an understanding of it. You look at the scientific aspect of it. It really doesn't hold a whole lot of water. So yeah, so you are what your father is? Absolutely. Yes. You are what your father is. I don't disagree with that at all. But not at the exclusion of the mother. So a more correct way of saying that is, you are what your father is and what your mother is. You're of both, your mother and the father. Both the Bible and science attest to this. You're of both. So that's all that I have to say about that. So please feel free to leave a comment and give me some feedback. And now I'm going to say this: I'll only be responding to certain posts. Of course, I'm going to be ignoring the internet trolls, and then I'll respond to comments that asking for some clarity, or someone may bring something to my attention that I may have overlooked. I mean, I'm not above correction. If I overlook something, I mean, please feel free to share it with me. And as I said, I'm going to put the scriptures that I use. It's going to be in the last slide. So if you can once my picture goes away, you will see that the scriptures, and you can go back and read them. So I hope you got something out of this video, and I bid you all farewell and so long.